We're getting close to Nebraska spring practice, which means fans all over are starting to formulate opinions on this roster. So in this video, I asked you guys one question. What is one hot take you have about the Nebraska Cornhuskers going into 2024? I'm going to break down whether I believe these takes are trash or facts and everything else in between. So real quick, if you like the content, please hit the like button on this video. It really helps me out, along with subscribing to the channel if you have not already. If you don't want to miss out any more Nebraska football content on YouTube this offseason, nobody is doing it like us. But without further ado, let's get into the video. All right, let's dive into it. So I recently polled the Huskers subreddit, and I asked them one question. What is one hot take? And I haven't seen these responses yet. They've been piling up over the last couple of days, but let's get into it. Starting off with the most upvoted post, that being from Aviator8989, who says, our defense will take a step backwards this year while the offense makes a big jump forward. Now, right off the bat, our offense will absolutely take a jump forward. I agree with that part of it. You add a legit quarterback in Dylan Raiola. You also add a bunch of skill players and through the transfer portal like Isaiah Nayer, like Jamal Banks, like Dante Dowdle. And last but not least, I do not foresee Nebraska to be as injured as they were last year. It was a crisis mode. You had your two best quarterbacks injured. You had your two best running backs injured. You had your two best wide receivers injured, plus an O-line that was banged up all year long. It was crisis mode for that offense. So absolutely it'll be better. Now, as for the defense taking a step back, I do not think that'll happen. We're talking about a defense that returns almost everybody besides three players, that being Luke Reimer, Nick Henrich, and Quentin Newsome. Other than that, your entire D-line is back. Your entire secondary, for the most part, is back. And as for that linebacker room, you add Stephon Thompson, who I believe is better than both Luke Reimer or Nick Henrich ever was. And you have a lot of young, budding guys who are ready to get playing time. One of my guys, Micah Gabayer, hopefully gets some more playing time. I think he's a stud. So I do not think the defense will take a step back. I think it'll be a lot better even next year. Expect maybe even a top 25 unit in all college football. I'm feeling really good about Tony White's group. So that's the first one. Second hot take comes from Turbo Raptor, who says, Dylan Raiola might underperform in his true freshman season. I hope I'm wrong, but he's probably going to need a couple years to be fully grown and developed. So right off the gate, I agree with the last part. Yes, he'll need a couple years to be fully developed. But as for the first part, him underperforming, we really have to ask ourselves, what are we even expecting of Dylan Raiola his true freshman season? He's not going to be a Heisman as a true freshman. Are we expecting him to be a top 10 quarterback? I don't know. Personally, I'm not expecting that. In order for him to truly underperform, I believe he'd have to be almost benchable. That's how bad he'd have to be. So as for his comment, I think that's not a great take. I don't think he'll underperform. He'll be average. That's what I'm expecting. Average, a little bit above average. And you'll see a lot of flashes. But he won't be benched. And really, I don't think he's going to disappoint anybody besides people who probably expected too much from him. Next one comes from Hus37, who says the tight end room is overrated. Absolutely. This is a great take. This is a facts take. This is not a good tight end room. I've said this throughout the offseason. Your starting tight end this year is going to be Thomas Fidone, who's going into his fourth year. And again, Thomas Fidone, super talented. Nobody's disputing that. But we're talking about a guy who's never produced in his career. The only time he's produced as a Cornhusker was when Heinrich Haarberg, his roommate, was starting at quarterback, who stared him down every single play. Other than that, Fidone was not productive last year, and he was banged up, tore a couple ACLs the first 2 years he was in college. So I'm not a huge Thomas Fidone guy. As for the rest of the room, you have Nate Borkacher, who's a walk-on. You have Ishmael Smith-Flores, who's going into his second year, who is a 3-star recruit. And you really don't have anybody else left in there. It's not a good tight end room. As for it being overrated, I don't think people are really propping it up to be awesome. But yeah, I don't think it's a good room. And as for our true freshman, I don't think Carter Nelson will be a traditional tight end his true freshman season. He's not big enough yet. He needs to put on more weight. And as for other guys, I don't think they'll play either. So yeah, I agree with this take. It is overrated. It's not a great unit. And honestly might be our worst positional group on the team as of right now. Next one comes from PaulBo78, who says, they will be ranked this year, although not at the end of the year. And I think that's a really good take, especially when you look at Nebraska's first 7 games on the schedule. They're really easy. You start off with UTEP. That's a W. Colorado at home. I feel a lot better about that than last year. Northern Iowa. That's a winnable game. Very winnable game against an FCS school. Then your first 4 Big Ten games. Illinois, Purdue, Rutgers, Indiana. There is a legit possibility Nebraska starts off this season 6-1, 5-2, maybe even 7-0. I'm not going to subscribe to that yet, but it is possible. Now, I do think by the end of the stretch, yes, there is likely possibility that Nebraska will be in that top 25. So I think that's a really good take. Yes, I do not think they'll end in the top 25. I don't even think they'll be close to it. But I definitely think that is a facts take. Next one comes from R. Sneed and Feed. Says there's 0% chance Gabe Irving is the starting running back. And I kind of agree with this. I think Gabe Irving is a little bit overrated. I love what he brings to this team. I think he's a competitor. It's just really unfortunate the way his career's progressed, has been so banged up, has had a couple season-ending injuries. At the end of the day, he's not the most talented back on this team. I wouldn't be surprised if Dante Dowdle takes that running back one job. I've been a huge Ramir Johnson fan throughout his career at Nebraska. I think he might be just the best running back still on this roster. He's coming back for another year. And then Emmett Johnson's a guy who played really well at the later half of the season when that running back room went down with injury, who I could also expect to be starting. So I think that's a good take. I really don't think Gabe Irving will be our starting running back, but I do expect him to be in the rotation. Next one says, we beat Colorado and Iowa and finished 6-6. I think that's a facts take. I definitely think we beat Colorado. I feel good about beating Iowa this year at Kinnick. We always do better at Kinnick for whatever reason. And yeah, this schedule does look easy, and it looks very manageable, like an 8-4 type of record, 9-3 even. But it was the same way last year, guys. And the reason we lost games was because we weren't disciplined and Matt Rhule made some mistakes during the game, unfortunately. Now, I expect that to be better this year, but I still think classic Nebraska, yes, you're going to drop a game you shouldn't, whether that's against an Illinois, whether that's against a Rutgers, whether that's against an Indiana. It's bound to happen. That's just the way it is here in Nebraska. So I think that's a good take. Personally, I'd rather subscribe to about a 7-5 season in case we beat Iowa and Colorado, but I think that's a good take. Next one says, if they miss a bowl game again, it's a huge disappointment and a red flag. Absolutely. This is a prove-it year for Matt Rhule, and I'll go back to the Scott Frost regime. After 2019, his second year, I lost hope in Scott Frost completely. Going into that season, he was so hyped up. The team was hyped up. They were in the top 25, and they blew it. They got blown out at home against teams they shouldn't have lost to. They lost to Colorado. They lost to Ohio State when game day was there, right? And it felt like Scott Frost would never recover, and he never did. As for Matt Rhule, it is so easy to rebuild programs in 2024. It is easier than it's ever been with the transfer portal and NIL, especially with all the resources Matt Rhule has. And now you have a 5-star quarterback who's going to be starting for you. Yes, if Matt Rhule doesn't make a bowl game with this easy of a schedule, it's a red flag, and I think he'll officially be on the hot seat. And again, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we make a bowl game. But yes, it's a prove-it year for Matt Rhule, absolutely. And it's a red flag, and people should start to be concerned in that case. Next one says, Dylan Raiola is the best quarterback in the conference as a true freshman. I think that is in between facts and trash. We're talking about a conference that is not very good at that quarterback position. Of course, the Big Ten West, as bad as it comes. You look at the new teams. UCLA does not have a great quarterback. USC, same deal. Losing Caleb Williams. Oregon and Dylan Gabriel, I don't love that. That's your basically only competitor. And then you look at the old Big Ten East. Michigan loses J.J. McCarthy. Kyle McCord leaves Ohio State. They're probably going to start a true freshman there, or Will Howard, who I think is pretty solid. But is Will Howard better than what Dylan Raiola could be? I don't think so. And then Penn State, Drew Aller, there's not much there. You're losing a lot of really talented quarterbacks in this conference. I think it's possible that Raiola is the best, but again, you need to beat out guys like Dylan Gabriel, guys like Drew Aller, guys like a Will Howard. But other than that, man, really possible. I think that's a pretty solid take. Next one says, Dixie Husker. Nebraska's record will barely improve. The schedule was incredibly weak last year and one of the best chances we ever had. Absolutely, I agree with that take. I don't think the record will barely improve. I think there is definitely a possibility we're looking at a 9-win team. But I agree with the second part that the schedule was super easy last year. It was the easiest we've seen in my lifetime, in your lifetime, since 70s, 60s. It was such an easy schedule. You're playing the worst Big Ten West of all time. You have an easy non-conference schedule. Your Big East crossovers were really, really easy. It was a terrible schedule, and we still couldn't make a bowl game, so I agree with that part. As for the fact that Nebraska's record will barely improve, I don't agree with that as much. I think we're looking at a bowl team, and if we make a bowl game, that's improvement enough. That's all right. So Nebraska makes the 12-team playoff is the next one from Cali Husker 83. Oh, man, I knew I was going to see this on here. This is a trash take. I don't think so. I don't think Matt Rhule gets there in the second year. Again, it's a very formidable schedule when you look at the later half. Again, you play Ohio State, you play USC, you play UCLA, you play Wisconsin, you play Iowa. Out of those 5 games, I only see about 2 wins. Okay, I think you could potentially beat Iowa. I think you could potentially beat UCLA. I don't see us beating Wisconsin. We haven't beat Wisconsin since 2011. I don't see us beating USC. I think they're going to be a lot better next year. And then I just do not feel good about playing Ohio State at period. So we're looking at about 9-3 best case scenario this season, maybe 10-2. Is that good enough to make the 12-team playoff? I don't think so. I think 10-2 might sneak you in there. But really, I don't think it'll be 12-2 or 10-2, excuse me. So I don't think that's a good take. I think that's a trash take. Not this year, maybe next year. Next one says, Scott Frost should be our offensive coordinator. No, he should not be our offensive coordinator. Now, yes, is Scott Frost a great coordinator? Absolutely. He deserves a spot somewhere in the country at a Power 5 job, but he will never be in Nebraska ever again as a coach. It's just never going to happen. He burnt so many bridges here. The fan base will never love him again. Unfortunately, I think Scott Frost is a great guy in real life, but yeah, I feel bad for Scott Frost, but no, he will never be in Nebraska again. So that is unfortunately a trash take. Man, this is a hot take. Rhule won't be Nebraska's head coach in 2026. If he's good, he will get stolen, or if he's bad, he'll get fired. I agree with the second part. Yeah, if he's bad, he'll get fired. Now, I do not think Matt Rhule is leaving. Maybe I'm naive. I don't think Matt Rhule is ever going to go back to the NFL. He already said multiple times that he likes college football a lot better. He tested it out. He tested the waters, and he said, yep, I'm just going to stay in college football. This is where I'm meant to be. I don't think Nebraska is that bad of a program where you have a good head coach and they leave to go to a better. Okay, you have everything you'd ever want in Nebraska. You have the opportunity to win a national title. You have as many resources as anybody in the country. So, no, I think if we're good, Matt Rhule will stay here for the rest of his career. I think that's the way it's going to work, just the way Nebraska, the university, funds their coaches. And I truly believe it when Matt Rhule says he likes it here, his family likes it here. Yeah, I think that's true. I again, maybe I'm naive, but that is, in fact, a trash take. Second to last one here from King Blank says, Matt Rhule's use of timeouts was the worst in Power 5, and it cost us 4 wins on the season by himself. His players played well enough to win. He's a terrible in-game coach. I don't think Matt Rhule is a terrible in-game coach, but yes, he made terrible in-game decisions. I don't think that's disputable. Matt Rhule even said that himself. He admitted it after his games. He said, yeah, I messed up a couple times. And that's really disappointing because when Matt Rhule was originally hired, we said, this is a game manager head coach. He'll be awesome. He'll make adjustments. He'll challenge when needed. He'll have timeouts when needed. We didn't really see that. He basically blew the Michigan State game by his use of timeouts. Same deal with the Maryland game. Same deal with the Iowa game and the final 5 minutes, which was a complete fiasco. But I think Matt Rhule gets a lot better in that category. A lot of times, again, you're still figuring out your team. I don't blame him too much. It was a little bit disappointing, but I do not think he's a terrible in-game head coach. He'll learn. And again, you look at Baylor, you look at what he did at Temple. He was fine. Last one, and this is a dandy. P.O. Pears Remember says, the curse is legitimate and Tom Osborne made a deal with the devil after the 93 Natty to win 3 total. Right off the gate, do I actually think Nebraska is cursed? No. But when you look at the last 20 years, yeah, it has been almost questionable the amount of bad things that has happened in Nebraska, things that have went against us, things that is nothing less than unlucky. A couple things come to the top of my mind. Losing to BYU on a Hail Mary. 2009 when you lost to Texas, 1 second left. When you look at since 2016, there was a stat that went around that Nebraska hadn't had a holding called against them by the opposing team in like 3 or 4 seasons by Big Ten refs. There's been a lot of shady stuff that has went against Nebraska. We've lost in incredible ways. We've had more talent than most programs have ever had, and we still lose. So do I think we're actually cursed? No, but man, I mean, it all adds up. Personally, my take is that we need to sacrifice Little Red at a halftime of one of the games and also switch to Nike. Adidas is just not it for Nebraska. That's my hot take. But are we cursed? No, but yeah, it's been a pretty bad 20 years, 10 years as a fan. All right, so that has been my hot takes or reacting to the hot takes. Let me know if you have any hot takes of your own down below. I'd love to respond to them. Let me know. Again, let me know if you want to see more content like this. I really enjoyed recording this video. As always, folks, again, like the video. Please hit that subscribe button if you don't want to miss out on any more Nebraska content this offseason. But go Big Red, go Matt Rhule, and see you in the next one.